Hello everyone. Today I want to show you a topic that is very close to my heart, and it is about social media algorithms and their unintended toxic side effects. So let's talk about this and a solution. Okay, but first, why do we even need social media algorithms to manage the content that is posted on these big platforms? So there is this saying called Eternal September, and what it refers to is back in the days, only universities and big companies had access to internet forums. So what would happen is every September, new students would come in, and then somebody had to teach them what is appropriate behavior on the forums. But then in 1993, AOL started to give access to all American users to the internet. And suddenly, forums on Usenet got completely flooded by the new users, and moderators weren't able to tell each user how to properly behave anymore. And ever since then, this was jokingly coined the Eternal September, meaning we can never go back to a time before moderation was just done in September. And now on, it's a constant thing. And this really wasn't manageable anymore, like forums which were intended for everyone. So now we needed to introduce social media algorithms to sort out this content. One of those algorithms is what image boards use to sort content. And well, you might be asking, well, what kind of algorithm? It's just an image board, but I'll get to that. So let's look at an example, and this example here is 4chan. And 4chan consists of a tons of topics. In 4chan, they're called channels. And let's just open one of them. Let's open /n transportation. And here you can see a bunch of threads related to the topic of transportation. And here we can see a thread which got started a while ago, and we can see it's about Swiss and German trains, right? So people who are interested in Swiss and German trains can then further this discussion. So let's dive into this thread. So when you open such a thread, now you can see the trains and you can see the discussion of the thread. And what you can do is, if you want to reply to this thread, you go here and you post a picture. For example, this beautiful train called EA814, and then you post it and boom. So now what happens? So after you post it, the thread gets bumped. And this is the algorithm that 4chan uses to moderate content. So, well, moderate. So you can see how this happens. If I click on next, this thread will move from where it was to the front position. And that is called a bump. So how is this very simple algorithm problematic? How could it possibly be problematic? Let's think about how the algorithm works. So let's say I post a political lie. What would be the appropriate behavior? Well, I would point it out, right? Say, well, you're wrong. But this bumps the thread. What if somebody posts hate or an insult? What would be the right thing to do? Well, you would inquire, well, what's wrong? Why do you have so much hate, right? But, exactly, why? But this bumps the thread, right? So what really happens is that good behavior leads to toxic environments. Because nobody reads the very first, the discussion, right? The people first see this toxic first topic, right? And if people reply on it, well, then this topic gets pushed to the very front. So good behavior is actually, it's kind of punished in a way, right? And I'm sure you all heard the term, don't feed the trolls. Now, I don't think this algorithm is the only reason QAnon happened, but it definitely is the reason why it happened on 4chan and not on Reddit. Now, 4chan actually has a way to mitigate this problem, but most users don't really know about it, and it's called Sage mode. So what you can do is, in the options, you can type in Sage, and then what happens is a reply doesn't get bumped, doesn't bump the thread. And eventually, 4chan has a built-in bump limit, so if people sage enough, the comment or the thread will then die off, right? So people can't bump it anymore. Now, this bumping algorithm is not the only way how websites can drive engagement with users. So if a user clicks on something, another thing algorithms can do is they can recommend you something else. And this is usually done with what is called a recommender system. So let's see what user E already liked or what he clicked on before. And in this case, it's a book and a bag. Then you can look, what are users who like similar things that E like? And in this case, user C likes books and bags, but he doesn't like headphones. So probably E also doesn't like headphones. Now let's look at Facebook, and pretty much all of its content is generated by a recommender system. Now, what is the problem with this? Well, first of all, the more content approaches borderline content, which gets a bit more illegal, the more people want to click on it, and thus increasing the engagement rate. But let's remind ourselves, recommender systems optimize for engagement. So there's already something kind of wrong with it. But even more problematic, once you like one extremist content and you like a second extremist content, well, then the recommender system will find you similar users who already like those contents and will recommend you more in this direction. And this leads to so-called, degenerate feedback loops. According to the Wall Street Journal, an internal report at Facebook, and this was back in 2016, reported that 64% of users who joined an extremist group did so because the algorithm recommended it to them. And this is a product of this degenerate feedback loop that we just talked about. So how did Facebook address those issues? Well, they kind of tweaked their algorithm a little bit, where when content approaches prohibited content, then it is recommended less. So, problem solved? Well, of course not, right? Because these algorithms still optimize for engagement. And even though now it doesn't recommend prohibited content, it still recommends you things that keep you engaged instead of things that you as a user are necessarily interested in. And this happens for a few reasons. Well, first of all, these social media companies, they are legally bound to maximize shareholder profit. And the way they do this at the moment is, by increasing engagement. And what does this entail? Well, this is usually by increasing watch time or by measuring the clicks and comments users do on a post, say on Facebook. But I argue this could be a lot worse, and it will probably get a lot worse because these companies will have to get more and more profitable, right? And one way they can do this is, they can only recommend profitable videos in the future, right? Or what they can also do is, they can pay less to creators. They can somehow try to make people even more hooked with a new strategy, or they can move certain features from the normal YouTube to YouTube Premium, for example, in the case of YouTube. And something that I'm a bit afraid of is soon Alphabet will get split into multiple companies, so Google and YouTube will not belong to the same company anymore. And now YouTube has to optimize shareholder profit separately from Google. And this might also lead to more pressure to increase shareholder profit. Furthermore, Algo Transparency mentions that self-interested adversaries, they can exploit these algorithms. Now, I want to go a bit further on this and mention a very specific person, and this is Yuri Bezmenov. If you watch any of his lectures, he will basically explain to you how adversaries can influence algorithms. But basically what they do is they just try to amplify these unintended side effects. They can't really create new side effects, but they can amplify those side effects that are already there. But this is not even the biggest problem. In my opinion, the biggest problem is that these algorithms, they exploit your curiosity. If you look at YouTube alone, 70% of the videos that are watched have been recommended by an algorithm. So most users or most people who watch a video don't even watch it because they originally were interested in watching it. Just let that sink in, 70%. And who knows how high the statistic will get when these algorithms get better. And the reason I say exploits curiosity is because it reminded me of this very similar paper where they had an agent who tried to solve a labyrinth, and as soon as he hit a television, what happened is the agent just stopped and just stared at the screen for a long time, right? And I think this is a good analogy for YouTube. you might think like, right, I'm navigating life and now I need a video on, I don't know, how do I open this watermelon? And boom, now you're caught on YouTube, right? So what is my solution to this problem? I shouldn't just point out the problem without giving a solution, right? That wouldn't be very productive. So I argue that we have to give intention back to the user. And users should choose which algorithm they want in their situation, right? So what do I mean with that? Well, let me just give you a few examples. If a user is interested in diving into a hobby, 4chan uses the perfect algorithm. Why? Well, these 4chan hobby boards, they optimize for engagement by bumping the thread over and over again, right? So this is the perfect environment to dive into a hobby. However, it is not the perfect environment to go into political activism, right? For political activism, you don't want to optimize engagement. You want to optimize truth first and foremost, and you want to optimize for impact, for example. Another thing users might want to do is they might want to just explore what's out there. They might want to increase their curiosity of the world, and maybe they see something and they're like, so they can feel this sense of wonder and they're like, wow, right? And here maybe a recommender system with a high temperature might help, but I never really saw this implemented. And lastly, if you're just interested in the feel good, then I recommend something like Reddit, because what Reddit does quite well is, for example, if you go to a subreddit for cats, then finding the cat that makes people, I don't know, feel the best is quite a subjective thing, but because people can like and they can dislike, the Reddit hive mind will somehow get the posts which the users like the most to the top. So in short, use algorithms based on what you want to do, right? And don't let your curiosity be exploited by algorithms. Or even shorter, don't be a pushover, right? You don't do 70% of the things your friends tell you to, right? And in a similar way, I don't recommend you to do 70% of the things that the YouTube algorithm tells you to do. Now, unfortunately, these big companies got bigger and bigger in the last couple of years. Why? Well, they got better and better at engaging users and stealing them from other sites. For example, there is this fantastic forum for people who are interested in Japanese animations called Myanimelist, and they employ really good algorithms for this particular user base, and I'm a big fan of them. So if you like a show, what can you do? Well, you can write a review on it, you can like different reviews, and kind of similar to how Amazon reviews work, and then you can add these shows to your list. But another way this algorithm can help users is, well, if you like a show, then other users can recommend to you shows which you might like and tell you why, if you like this show, then you might like this show. So why did I mention all of this? Well, I tried to create my own social media platform called Mooddecks, and basically what it does is it tries to copy this idea of this Myanimelist and tries to generalize it for all kinds of experiences you might have, right? So for example, here we can see a mood about a certain vaporwave album, and you can write how you should enjoy it and why I like it, why I rated it 10 out of 10, for example, right? And then you can also see how others like it, and you can like add it to your own list. And I even added a small Tinder-like swipe feature where you can go through moods and get inspired to maybe do something similar. So here one user posts he likes to cycle in the fog during the night, and another user really likes to put flowers on the desk, and maybe that's something you're inspired to do. Or another person really likes to sit in ponds, right? And yeah, so these kinds of moods are then suggested to you, and based on that you can get inspired. And I wanted to like expand this further and further, but basically this suffers from the same problems that we saw before, right? So again, engagement, if you optimize for engagement, you again end up with this borderline content. And another problem that I have is this requires a ton of moderation, so you don't get any content that doesn't fit this theme, which is not something I can, realistically manage at the moment. Let's say it like this. So because of these moderation issues, I decided to move Mooddecks to Discord because it has great moderation tools to handle such a large and growing community. It's easier to flag politics or ban users, and I would otherwise have to rewrite all these tools first. And at the moment, it's still not very clear what the optimal way of engaging in a social media environment should be, right? So this Discord server should kind of be a small experiment where we can see, well, in what way can we create a forum which is targeted towards moods? So if you're interested in the discussion and if you just want to enjoy moods, please join the server. And, well, a few rules. Don't post any personal stuff.
Unless it is about an original mood you discovered.
We don't want to create any kind of contemporary politic debates. And basically, you just want to assimilate the mood, right? Basically, if you know what a gondola meme is, you're in the right place and you should join.